Sorry that we're a couple of minutes late up, but we are indeed now ready. So, good evening and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl number 27. The one where we alienate the people recently attracted by two very popular episodes by talking almost exclusively about maths related stuff. I'm PurpleChest, this is One World, One Blood Bowl number 27, and I'm thrilled that I've got three much smarter people than me joining me because it's a subject where I feel very lost. There's been a lot of talk about it at the moment because recently we've had all sorts of change. I say recently, depends on which format, but you could argue that recently the NAF, which has started to move to a Glico-based system, that then has a bit of a hiatus. We did invite someone on from there, the person I was recommended to invite on. They sent me a lovely email saying they've retired from Blood Bowl. So who knows where that's actually at in terms of a project. I don't, I'm sure someone does. Wolfin possibly was suggested to me as a person that may be up on that, but I ran out of time. Fumble has also recently altered the chicken rendang, or coach rating system as it's known there. My chicken rendang has almost entirely disappeared. I now have a really tiny e-penis to wave at people when it comes to Fumble, so I want to ask how that's happened and where that's going and why. So we brought on Krista. Hello, Krista. Nice to have you on again.
Hello, hello.
Always a
Good,
pleasure. You are going
good
to take
day
full
for us.
responsibility for the disappearance of my chicken rendang.
Absolutely. And
Good.
it's just to spite you.
So,
People are saying that your microphone is sounding a bit roboty.
oh, okay.
Sounds fine for me, obviously, but
We'll do the standard unplug and replug, and hopefully that'll solve that. Do let me know. So yes, I want to have a chat about chicken rendang, where that's going. Most people seem to think it's a nice new system. So yeah, let's hope we get to hear about that, and I can finally understand the numbers I'm looking at. I've also invited on Elyod, a regular on the show. Hello, Elyod.
Good evening. Hello, everybody.
Congratulations! Recently won the Fumble Major.
Ah, thank you very much, PC. That's very nice to say.
Well, congratulations. I mean, it's huge, obviously for you. Um, and I mean, obviously, in the memory and the shadow of the great years of the past when all the greats would be in those majors, you've gone and won one in the new era. That's
I have, yes, yeah, the new indeed, end of a a very long time of failure for myself.
yeah. Any luck in the chalice? Yeah, as yet is that still?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
okay, good.
Unlikely to ever have any luck in the challenge now, of course.
Yes, people are complaining that you're a little soft. I would say of volume, uh, not necessarily to play at Blood Bowl. I don't think
Right.
that's what people meant. So yes, we will turn that up, and hopefully that'll be a little better. Um, you ratings. That's something that you feel you want to talk about, that you know about, that you understand.
Ooh, know and understand are pretty big words, but I mean, I guess I can, talk about it from the perspective of someone who plays in such systems for sure. Yeah, I try to, my involvement with Blood Bowl is usually quite a competitive one. Right, I want to qualify for tournaments. I want to finish high in the ratings. So yeah, I can comment from that perspective.
Is it fair to say that you look at the number, that it matters to you if the number's going up and down, that you check where you're rated, where you're ranked, where you are on various ladders and systems?
On the outside, no. On the inside, yes, a little bit. Like sometimes I look at the numbers and think, oh, that's nice, but I'm mostly bothered about winning tournaments, I guess, right? So yeah, I'm mostly interested in going to Chalice and playing in the formal majors, that kind of thing. But yeah, I have to admit that sometimes I look at the numbers and like, oh, that's quite cool. I'm in I'm this place on the ladder or whatever, and I try to make it not a big deal. But yeah, it's a nice thing to look at. Yeah.
Um, I've always stated that I'm someone who I don't care about the rankings, and I think that's a little unfair. When I say I don't care, Purple Goo was quite interesting on the One World One Blood Ball channel on my Discord. That I kind of agree with him that people put both too much and too little value in them all at the same time. I get a bit triggered by people who totally dismiss rankings and say, well, they're all manipulable, they're all gameable, none of them mean anything. And I sort of think, well, kind of don't all of them mean something? There is some reason why that ranking, that value has been assigned to that individual or that team. But then at the same time, the people that say this is definitive, I think they're insane too. There has to be a middle path, doesn't there, where useful and intuitive and interesting, but they're not definitive. And I think that's kind of where I sit. Luckily enough, despite not being smart enough to work most ranking systems out, I've also never really had to bother. I just sort of play some games and see what happens, and kind of intuitively seem to end up massively gaming the system according to everybody else, or just playing some games according to me. Do you feel that people, accusing you of dominating rankings and caring about it, perhaps that's just a side effect, or is that an explicit aim?
Yeah, I mean, probably I'm probably more on the side of accusing other people of caring too much about the rankings, but yeah, I agree that you can absolutely buy too much into them, but they tell you something, right? There's some information there, but it's always just a very small set of information that doesn't provide a full picture, right? And in terms of gaming the rankings, I don't know that I always dislike that kind of accusation because if you're playing in a competitive environment, if you're taking the best approach to try and win games or whatever, then sure. I mean, isn't that what you should be doing? Isn't that a completely valid approach to playing the game you want to play?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really good question. Is it a valid approach to the game we're trying to play? And do rankings encourage positive behaviours, or do they encourage really negative behaviours? I mean, originally this was a beer and skittles game. Are we insane for trying to rank it and rate it and constantly, decide who's where and what team is exactly where? Is that Has it changed all of us and changed Blood Bowl? Might be a fair question too. But before we go too far down that sort of rabbit hole, we've got someone sat quietly in the corner waiting to come bouncing in. Brand new to One World, One Blood Bowl. I'm thrilled to welcome on a man I've decided to call Geryon, and he hasn't corrected me. Welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Nice to talk to another elf coach.
Well, I mean, we do love our elves. We were talking about that just pre-show. Why are you an elf coach? Let's start there.
Well, I discovered kind of the whole fantasy element through Dungeons and Dragons when I was, when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
And started playing elves, and as you can probably tell from my image, I'm not necessarily the biggest, stockiest person, so it's kind of fit that kind of finesse, glass cannon type of racial or faction or whatever you want to call it, play mode, and just started playing Dungeons and Dragons with elves, and it's kind of fit my play style in Blood Bowl, and so just
So you're
kind of
sort
a
of saying that
natural.
as a naturally beefcake sort of guy, you thought I'll do something really opposite when I role play.
Yes, like 145 pounds soaking wet. Yes.
I mean, we were talking about that because I've always said that one of the reasons I struggle to coach dead teams is I spent way too long being a paladin as a teenager, and to me, dead things are just wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. You kind of fit the mold of what you were first kind of sunk in your head, and then that's what you follow through, right? I do play dwarves on occasion, mostly to kind of bug Sven. Sven's my cousin. Sven Rudabega?
Yes.
And he always plays dwarves. I always tell him, used to always tell him, no, you got to branch out. Like, okay, you got dwarves down. Try something else. Try something else. And all I remember is that one day he started to play Wood Elves and he was screaming with his War Dancer and Luminous was on stream. He was like literally freaking out because he was screaming with his War Dancers. They were surviving, they were tanking everything, and Luminous was pulling his hair. It was the most funniest thing I ever saw.
Well,
And
because to a
that was
dwarf,
like,
all the players are interchangeable. The
yes,
collective survives.
yes. So it was just one of the funny experiences. But yeah, I've tried to get him to branch out, but yeah, I do occasionally play other races as well.
Now, of course, whilst also knowing you for your love of the elves, I'm sure most people that have heard of your name, maybe not everyone has, but has probably in relation to the fact that you've been an admin for quite a while now on both Blood Bowl 2, and I believe seeming to be moving on to Blood Bowl 3 as well.
We're looking to. To be fair, Sinai has been very non-committal about what sort of tournaments and competitions they want to have. I think, to be fair with them, they're more focused on trying to get the game, like the core rules and a lot of the bugs ironed out before they focus on competition.
Yeah.
But yes, so I've been doing it. I don't know, it was like maybe 4 years ago. I kind of expressed interest, and all of a sudden, Dode and Spider and those guys, Mercy Flush. I don't know, no name, recall that name. They said, okay, come on in, right? Literally, they needed someone else to do the bans, concession bans, because nobody wanted to do it. And that's how it started out. And effectively, once Dode got confident that he could leave it alone and there was another person that had the same kind of focus that he had on it, she stepped away, and that's when I kind of took over and and that's all she wrote. So people,
So
I
you came in
wasn't
to be the ruthless killer, the last man anyone saw before being banned from the entire system.
yes,
And
I'm the
when he
dad that
saw your
went like,
dead, cold eyes, he went, "There's the
yes,
man to take over."
I used the finger and flicked that person off the competition.
Krista, you can have some sympathy here. That the man that puts the final bullet into our decision here and there, running as an admin for 20 years on Fumble, there's a cost, isn't there?
Indeed, indeed. I mean, you can joke about that kind of stuff, but it kind of sucks to do. If there are people who are doing the wrong thing and you keep telling them that this is not okay, this is not okay, these are the boundaries, they keep stepping out of it. And eventually you have to say maybe this is not the fit for you or for us, and that's never fun. Never fun. You
Yeah.
have to tell someone that you can't be here when they obviously like being here. It's it's not a part that you want to do really, but it has to be done.
Yeah, it's all about giving, I suppose, the majority a gaming environment that is safe from some of the worst predations of the minority. Um,
Hmm.
which perhaps in terms of rankings, what we give them and the majority, what they want, the systems they game in, it's all very interesting. But yes, so we have two senior admins from two completely different online forms here. Um, what I wanted to talk about this evening, so I mean, I do want to talk about that whole admin scene, and it's nice to have you here to talking to each other and sharing some of those concerns. And I'm not going to talk up anything, I don't want to. People in chat are asking, can you specifically ask why this decision was taken or that decision was taken? No, I'm not remotely interested in that. What I wanted to talk about first of all is the ratings of players and coaches in Blood Bowl. Why do we do it? How do we do it? Is Blood Bowl 3 doing it? Is Fumble doing it in a good way? Who's doing it well? And should it be done in the first place? So, who wants to kick us off? There's a nice easy one for five. Let's talk about number Wang first, maybe, because it's dominating people's minds. I don't know who knows much about that, or indeed what, if anyone, is behind the wall of cyanide we can say about it. But at the moment, Blood Bowl 3 has told us they are using an ELO-based system. Are they using it just to put things on the ladder, or for the rankings, for the matchmakings? And at the end of seemingly these pre-seasons, 16 people are being grabbed and put into a tournament based on, or 32 in this month, based on where those ELO rankings have taken them. So what's behind number Wang? Anyone seem to understand it or what's going on? Elyod, you've had a lot of number Wangs.
Yeah, I have. So it started off and the name came about because something was not implemented correctly, or something that shouldn't have been implemented was implemented, and
Right.
and the rankings seem to vary wildly and crazily, right? As you played games, people losing lots of ranking after they won games, this kind of thing. But they changed it at some point, right? Within the last couple of weeks, they changed it, and now it seems somewhat stable. And my very limited knowledge about what they're trying to do is that there's some element of both TV matching and ELO matching, I believe. And so you'll be attempted to be matched within certain TVs and within TVs and within ELOs that increase as the spin time increases, right? And then yeah, you're assigned a ranking on the ladder, and that's your number one.
So it gained the
Oh,
sort of jokey
that's right.
nickname Number Wang, which was from a BBC, no, but a UK comedy show, wasn't it? Where there was a quiz show format no one understood, and you had to win it by guessing the number Wang, which was clearly made by a formula that no one on the show understood or ever guessed how to work out. Um,
Who actually used coined that term? Was it Gdanik or was that
Yeah, I think it was Gdanik. Yeah, yeah.
it may have been, yeah, but from a series called by Mitchell and Webb, which I think was on BBC Two, wasn't it? Where they had a whole series of this quiz show called Number Wang, which obviously ran by completely insane rules that nobody understood. And eventually a number would be declared Number Wang and somebody would win. So it's a sort of jovial name for a system people didn't understand. But isn't it just now rating you based on ELO? So if you knock over someone that's done well, you'll get a bigger chunk, and if you knock over someone with less, you'll presumably get a smaller one. Isn't that,
now
Krista? You've had
has Cyanide openly uh, published or indicated what form of I know what it is.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I could say what it
Sure.
is.
Okay.
Do people know publicly what the algorithm or formula is?
Not not specifically.
So
No,
they make
they
the assumption that it's Elo.
well
Just
they did. I think they used the phrase elo.
They
I'm pretty
did.
sure they
Yeah.
they used the phrase elo, and they said that it spirals out when mashing. But yeah, no specifics.
no specifics.
So, I mean, to me, that sounded like a fairly reasonable sort of guess at a start for a system. You rate teams based on more or less who they've knocked over and how well they've done. But then, if you're going to use it for matchmaking, you start looking for something with a similar rating. But then, if that doesn't work, you look for increasingly bigger circles until you find something that does work. That sort of
Yeah.
seems to make some sense.
It does. It's a starting point, and but my criticism of like to be fair, I don't really care, and it's just I'm not a numbers or statistics person,
Hmm.
but to be fair, so I'm very open with the formula itself, and I wouldn't be able to debate with someone like Krister on
Sure.
the merits of Elo or Glico. But my observation on this was one was they weren't very transparent with the value itself. So
Right.
when people were switching up and down the ladder, they were like getting when you don't know why did I drop 10 paces when I just won the game,
Yeah.
right? So that was one. The other one open
Oh
to a
no.
bigger on what is the purpose of the open ladder?
Yeah.
Now, let's just assume that we want to have it so that let's just say possible a shot at top of the ladder or on the first page of the leaderboard. Well, the problem with Elo is that it gets better as you play more games. And we really need to understand how long is a season? How many games do we expect reasonably does a person can play within that duration of the season? Otherwise, you're going to have a small subset of people who are willing to play an exorbitant amount of games to get the high elo score, and they're going to be the good players, right? It doesn't matter if you're shit, you're not a very good player. It doesn't really matter how many games you play per se. But the problem is that if the season is too short, and if you don't have a kind of a throttle that Dode Math had, or a ceiling, what you're going to end up having is you're going to have a handful of players that will pump out 200, 300, 400 games, and then everyone else won't have the time to actually accumulate the games before the season resets and and then team elos get reset again. That's the problem, right? Like if it didn't get reset like a lifetime coaching rating, then yeah, you have a longer runway to get your rating. But this is about using elo within, and it's not really elo's fault. It's any type of ranking system you have in a season where you say that it's going to reset, you're going to have to make a design decision as to how much are we going to reward activity versus how much are we going to make the format open to as many people as possible without making it so that it's like the World Cup. You only play 20 games and that's it, right? You don't want that. You also don't want it so that basically it's only the people that play 300, 400 games, which is
Yeah.
essentially everyone on the leaderboard, right?
So we,
And
we used to have an elo-based system on Fumble. Is it the cap, the fact that it's a bottled system with a definite end point that you think is limiting where elo can be effective? Krista, do you recognise that as a behaviour that would trash a elo as a concept?
Yeah, I mean, like Geryon was saying, it's a matter of designing what you're aiming for.
Hmm.
I mean, I have very, very specific and very clear opinions on what a good rating system should look like and how you should be matchmaking and the crossover between the two.
Okay.
I'm trying to not blurt that out too much.
Well,
I'll
let's
hold
go
back
there.
a bit.
They are going to exist. We're going to have them out at some point. Let's crash
I
over
mean,
into that
yeah,
lane, and then we can just move seamlessly between them. So we've moved from an elo-based system to a more glico-based system, and I know you always adjust them to what you feel is right for Blood Bowl. Why
mhm.
was that move made on Fumble? Why did you think that's going to work in a perpetual system where nothing ever gets reset? Remember?
Well, it doesn't really matter if it's reset or not. Glico is just outright better in every way possible, in every way conceivable. If you configure Glico in a very specific way, you get Elo. So they're sort of related. Glico is a generalization, which is just, it gives you more control. It gives you more knobs to tweak to say, okay, I want this system to work this way. And that's something that's, to me, is interesting. I mean, for the reason that I switched is not really because I think that the ratings will be fundamentally better. It's because there's a slight improvement, and I can tweak things, and I think that's fun. That's why I switched.
Okay.
Because I think it's an interesting challenge. Not because that the Elo system is fundamentally problematic. Over the decade or whatever, 15 years that we've been running running Elo, yes, there are some problems. I've noticed some of the negative aspects of the Elo system that Glico sort of attempts to fix and improve on.
Famously, it's also brought in some decay into the system. Are you a believer that was needed because of the open-ended nature of Fumble?
No, not really. Decay is something. I mean, Glico on its own doesn't really have decay. I've added a decay-like system that doesn't change the ratings, just the rating that's actually being displayed. So if people disappear for a while, the rating will disappear. So they get removed from the top 10, basically. That's what it comes down to. People have expressed for a long time that, okay, someone who's been absent for 2 years, haven't been playing rated games, they're still number one, and that doesn't feel fair to people.
Yes, Mount Goo, Purple
Yes.
Goo, when he was at the peak of the summit, was christened Mount Goo. Mount Goo was famously eventually crested. But are you telling me that Mount Goo would now still be there, but would be invisible in the rankings unless?
Would be lower. I mean, fundamentally, what you add with switching to Glico is you have your rating in the Elo system. You have a rating, and then you play against someone else, and then you compare ratings, and you get more or less depending on who you play against. With the Glico system, what you add fundamentally is an uncertainty variable, standard deviation, or rating deviation, or whatever you want to call it. There, instead of saying you are rating 1500, you're saying you're somewhere between 1300 and 1700. And the more you play, if you get the expected results, your deviation will get narrower and narrower. So that instead of, okay, you have a span of 200 ratings, you have a span of 50 rating. So that's what Glico does. And then when you do something unexpected, say you lose against someone who's much lower than you drop down a bit, and your uncertainty goes up. So the system sort of adapts to strange results in a way that Elo can't, because there's just not enough numbers.
Right.
And what I've done well, also if you're not playing games, the uncertainty goes up and up and up over time. So if you're taking a break, you're away on, I don't know, a Blood Book course with PurpleChest for 2 weeks, then your deviation on Fumble gets more and more uncertain. Okay, is this the actual correct rating? So what I'm displaying for for decay, to get back to that, is your rating minus your deviation, so that when the system gets more and more uncertain, your apparent rating or visible rating on Fumble goes down.
Right. So someone complained recently that I was rated as a superstar. Yes, a lot of the chat is concerned that your cat is about to
Yes.
destroy things.
Yes.
And none of
Eating
us
a
are getting any
cat.
focus while there's a cat on screen. You do realise that?
Okay, let me fix that. There we go.
Cat cruelty. Outrageous. Yes. We're going to get comments. Do comment, particularly on YouTube, because anything you write is good for the algorithm. Throw me some of those likes. I do love those. But comments are also incredibly welcome on the YouTube version. Spotify, we don't care about you, whether you comment or not. You've already downloaded it. We've got you. So the Glico is kind of cool, and I mean, I'm always behind anything that interests you, because it means that Fumble stays interesting to you, which means that you don't turn it off. But are you telling me that fundamentally it's not going to be in your head more accurate in terms of how people are being rated? Just more fun?
Pretty much. There is a slight improvement. There is, because of this uncertainty concept, and it's not quite so wild and jumping up and down.
Krister, Glico. So where is the where are you applying the Glico? Is it on the coach, or is it on the coach and the faction?
Well, both.
Both?
Not on team level. It's on coach level, but I track a large number of ratings depending on what people are playing. So with the switch to the Glico system, We have an overall Glico rating, which is what's shown in most of the places. We have each coach has a rating for each roster they're playing, so Skaven or Dwarves or whatever. There is a rating for Black Box, which is only Black Box schedule games. There is a rating specifically for open play games, and there is a rating for tournament games. All of these combinations are with both overall and per roster. So there is hundreds per coach that are being tracked. It's the same formula that's being run, but multiple times for every
And
match.
these are essentially lifetime
Yes.
value,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And even
Okay.
when they're off the race, they're for the entire race, not for any specific team within that race.
So I mean, Geryon, do you know roughly how Elo works?
Yeah, I haven't. I looked at the formula and I
So
actually
yeah, so
got
you have like the K value, which decides how much you go up and down when you're playing games. With Glico essentially replaces the K value with a standard deviation figure instead. That's roughly on a very high level what the math does.
right. I was wondering about that because I did read up on Glico, and that was the thing. It was just that certainty value does it get larger or broader as less activity you have? Is kind of my
Um,
understanding.
the general principle is that as long as you're not doing anything unexpected, if you don't have huge upsets, you sort of your deviation gets narrower, so it reduces.
Okay.
So essentially, in ELO terms, the K value goes down and down and down the more you play. If you have an upset, so you have a low rating and playing against a massively higher rated person and win, then your deviation will increase because the system sees that okay, you did something unexpected.
Right.
So
Okay.
then the deviation goes up. But generally speaking, it goes down. It narrows down the more you play.
Right.
I mean, I usually don't have concerns about any rating systems. As I said, play some games, see what happens, and presumably, if there's any kind of rating system, success will lead to success, and failure will lead to the other thing. The one thing that did worry me slightly about this is notorious fumble user and even unbeknownst to him, Blood Bowl 2 celebrity Matt Dacker seems incredibly keen on the move to the what he calls the Glico 2 system, but only advocates that the decay you've built in inputs faster. Is that because, again, a large number of games can still dominate the system, or is it that activity dominates the system?
Well, it sort of depends. Again, I mean, this is super mathy, right? What I do with the decay is not really part of the Glico system normally. It's just a visible layer that I put on top to simulate a decay-like system. The people who are more active, I mean, I'm running the system with a 2-day rating period, which is basically you have a rating at the start of this 2-day time span. All the games you play are played as if they were played at once. So you're starting with your starting rating, and then you check all the expected results. So fundamentally, both of these systems, both the Elo and Glico, come up with the number that says you're going to be winning 75% of these games, or 70. I don't know, 75% of all the games that you play over this period of time, given the different ratings of your opponents. If you do better over that period, over those matches, if you do better than 75%, your rating goes up. If you do worse, your rating goes down. So that's sort of how it works fundamentally. So that's the rating period that we have on Fumble. For now, I'm using 2 days for the overall rating,
Okay.
and that's with the decay. If you're not playing for a while, your rating, your deviation will increase, and if that goes over a certain number, then you it starts affecting your rating. If you're super active for a period of time, or you're playing regularly, your deviation will go down and down and down, and then there's sort of a small grace period where if you don't play for a week or two, then nothing will happen. But if you don't play for 3-4 months, then you will start decaying.
So it's honing in on a number that it feels is fairly certain in terms of how it thinks you will do in any given match put in front of you. And then the
Yes.
less active you are, the less certain it will eventually become as to that number, whether you're managing to hold that form and hold that quality of play. That seems
Yeah.
pretty reasonable to me. so like a reasonably desirable outcome. Why do we need this at all over just win percentage though? I mean, everyone has just a raw number. Even on Fumble, you
Yeah.
can look up anyone's. They win 83% of matches, or they win 21% of matches.
Obviously, that's a leading question. You know the answer, but
Let's
let's
assume I
assume that
don't,
you
because
don't.
I'm genuinely at times that stupid.
Okay, so if you're playing against someone who's, well, let's say you have coaches A and B. Coach A plays against rookies that have never seen Blood Bowl before, and Coach B is playing against all your favorite streamers who are arguably pretty good at the game at this point. These two, if they win 80% of their games, who's the better coach? Generally speaking, it's typically going to be the person who plays against the stronger opponents. That's what both the Elo and the Glico system is designed to do. So that if you're winning against someone who's strong, you get more points. If you win against someone who's very weak, you get less points.
Okay, so that's what Fumble's trying to do with its ranking systems. That seems to make sense to me. Is that what we're trying to do with the Blood Bowl 2 and 3 ranking systems, do you think, Geryon?
Um,
Because there's more tension there about what Cyanide want from it, isn't it? Which is lots of games played, presumably.
yeah. So from that perspective, like so where Krister's applying it is on the lifetime essentially assessment of the coach's skill level. Essentially, if you have a high value, the coach may not necessarily be the best coach just because he has the highest number, but anyone within that range, acceptable range, you would assume that they're all on an equivalent skill level. The problem I have is that it's the seasonal window and reset, and depending on how long the season is, you are not going to give enough of the players the opportunity to get the games in to get that value, to get the value that is fair. And this is the kind of what we're noticing right now is that the teams that can essentially play 80, 100 games, there are obviously exceptions, but of those people on the leaderboard are essentially on top of the leaderboard. So what ends up happening is, and because it gets reset, um, everyone has to start all over again the next season. So let's just say hypothetically you have a coach that plays 100 games every season, and then after 4 seasons they got 400 games in, right? And another coach plays 50 games and basically continues on for a longer duration, but they don't get reset. So the coach rating gets constantly updated based on their activity, which is fine. So eventually, over a distance of a certain amount of time frame, you could whether one coach plays more versus another, you can get an assessment as to whether they're equally skilled or what their differences are. But if you're getting reset, right, the players that are essentially who are actually good will never get a chance, or they're always playing behind the 8 ball, behind the players that are essentially can pump out 300, 400 games. And that was my concern with the way Elo was set, in the sense that what Dode Math did was, because this is a team competition, this is not a measure of coach skill. This is a measure of how well the team is doing within this tournament. And what Dode Math did was they consciously made it so that your highest opportunity to get a high score is between 28 to 42 games, because the season was around 42 days, and you figured that 0.67 games to a game a day was most reasonable to get a reasonable reach of players to have a good chance at the ladder. So that maybe you can't put 300 games in during 6 weeks, but you can get one team with 42 games in. Well, it means that someone like some really good fumble player or NAF player could just say, you know what, I want to casually play, and all of a sudden, and that's why you see guys that are casually playing the outside, like coming out of NAF, come in, just get a team up, qualify, play. Who's that guy? There was a French guy. Just to see him? He played a
Just to
few,
see him,
few
yes.
games, and in this current format, there's no way you can get these really good casual players into the leaderboard unless they get lucky and they just get, like, after the first few games, constantly get just top tier players. Now,
I
one
recently
way
noticed in the current draw there's a player called Besters, and if that's the same as the NAF Besters,
it is.
that's again a very casual player, extremely good Team England NAF player, but hardly anyone on Blood Bowl 2 will know him.
Now you can fix this with matchmaking, and one of the things that Chris mentioned, because I looked at your old matchmaking, And one of
Yes,
the
one of
things
the
that
old systems, the ladder system. Yeah.
right, one of the things that intrigued me was that a lot of real life ladders, especially when there's a limited player base, use the one that's current and common right now is online. It's called Cases Ladder, but it's a similar concept. I know Christers uses points, and Cases Ladder uses positioning. But one of the fundamental bases on this is that you go up. It's not elo. You go up based off of the players you beat, and also to mitigate the small player pool, you can actually directly challenge people within the ladder, so that you don't have to hope and get lucky to get strong opponents. You can basically say, "Hey, Elyod, you're 5 places ahead of me. I'm ranked 10th, you're ranked 5th. I challenge you," right? And that way you can essentially have people
I mean,
play.
but unlike games of squash in a middle-class suburban neighbourhood, I mean, it's really hard to imagine that if I'm from Australia and I say to Elyod, you must play me, how would that possibly be enforced? Or
Well, this is where the scheduling part. I know Chris, we talked about this offline. That's probably, I would assume that was part of the problem, headaches that you had to deal with regards to scheduling and things like that. The deal and mediation and governance on people dropping out, not
yeah,
meeting. Go, hey, you promised me to meet on last week, and you didn't show up on the game, right?
because human
So
behaviours are a huge tension on any system we build, aren't they? Whether people
And I
will
mean,
engage with it and play it in the way that it's designed to be played. And something that's sort of enforcing a behaviour like that, my worry would be people would just be like, nope, I'm out.
and there is also a fundamental problem with that type of system where you have a score system that you sort of get. I know which system that you're talking about has had to do with you take the difference between the points and you take half of it, and if you win you go up and if you lose you go down, right? The problem is that there is no incentive for the person at the top to play. You can just stop and people will have trouble catching up. There is no incentive to play down unless you have a challenge system, which is incredibly difficult in a global environment. People simply cannot be expected to schedule their games in that way. So it's not really possible. And I mean, you would have to have something like, if you get challenged, you must play or something, but that doesn't work unless you have a small little league where people have other incentives to actually participate, such as money, for example, in tennis or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally thought Dodemath did quite a good job of setting a sort of realistic, achievable target for people to sort of head towards. Somewhere in there, as you said, somewhere between about 30 and 40 games within a 6-7 week period. But it was very much about rating a team, as you say, not an individual. But it did drive very grinding behaviours, didn't it? And we do need to think in any system we build. I mean, I don't ever blame the coaches, because coaches will, like water, they will find the weak points in any system. They will seep into the cracks. I mean, Elyod, look at him seeping into a crack right now as we talk. Um, Elyod will look at a system and say, where's the advantage that can legally be had within this system? And if one of those advantages is, play 100 games in the first 3 days, then maybe Elyod won't do it, but somebody will, won't they? Doesn't every system always going to have a weakness? Don't we need to accept that?
there's always fishing and angling in any system that's going to be there. And there's also going to be the advantage of any kind of ladder system, and there's always going to be some implicit advantage for good players that are willing to outwork someone else, the other good players. But
So,
one of
so
the
if we're
things,
trying to build a system that somehow is, and one of the people said, I think it was you, Krista, ultimately what we're looking for in a ranking system, whether it's for an individual or a team, is a number that predicts how good it will be in a match it faces compared to somebody else. Isn't that the idea? That if you rate
Yep.
Elyod at 70 and me at 60, it means Elyod's got a better chance in the game than I would have. You'd also be insane, of course, but I mean, you could do that figuratively.
I mean, there's also the fundamental problem that's sort of unique to Blood Bowl compared to something like chess, where
Well, let's
Elo is
bring that in,
super
because so far
popular.
it's all sounded easy. So let's bring in the unique problem.
Team values. Teams are not equal. Every other game you play online, generally speaking, the teams are equal, or they're trying to be balanced. You're playing in chess. Yes, white has a slight advantage, but you play equal amounts of the different
Yeah,
sides.
white OP for sure.
Indeed, but the sides are fundamentally equal. In Blood Bowl, that's just not the case. You have team values that make the matches completely uneven. You have things like dwarves versus Amazons, which is a very biased matchup, which Fumble doesn't take into account at this point because it's too difficult to do.
Should we? Should we? Isn't that the heart of the game, though? Is that there's an unfairness and an imbalance within it. That should we really be looking for a rating system that rubs that out?
I don't think we should because I honestly, it's one of those things where like when you look at football teams and you're rating them and based off of wins, a lot of times you're going to have it where, especially international teams, you're going to have it where the clubs won't release their players, so you're essentially having players that are essentially it's like a B squad or like a it's not an A plus squad but an A squad. Also, players might be injured, players might be hurt, right? But they're not. It's like at that point where it's like I think we're trying to get too fine-grained in this. One of the things is and I call it in the software development best efforts. Like let's try to get something where we can use whatever formula we have to gauge the team. I'm speaking open ladder. I'm not speaking of the coach ratings, but so on specifically on the open ladder or ladder systems, gauge the team, not the coach, at a certain based off of their success, and then based off of that number, try to match teams to each other with consideration, including TV, to get so that basically matches are much more even and more entertaining.
Okay, so
So
I mean that sounds like a lovely principle, and even an entertaining match for the two teams. But what if? I mean, let's just live in a fantasy world where Elyod is an 80% coach and I'm a 20% coach. It's not that different to the truth. If we're both playing the second game with a new team, it's not going to say it's not going to be that even a match as I face Elyod. I'm going to get ruthlessly destroyed.
yes, um,
So if we leave the coach out, are we? What are we rating? Just the odds of that team coached by anyone at all beating that team coached by anyone at all?
well, because this is a team competition, and I'm not even, and it's also a team competition being reset. I'm not considering the coach themselves in a lifetime coach rates. So when we're dealing with new teams, and where the teams haven't had a lot of games recorded, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in the matchmaking with that. But then it's also early on where we're basically you're getting just say Elyod's team, 80% win coach fling team, right? So it's got 5 games in, and you've got a dwarf team 4 games in. Well, you know what? You guys haven't had a lot of put a lot of investment into this. You guys are new teams, relatively same TV. You know what? Rankings are similar. Well, it may not fit, but that's kind of it's going to happen. What we don't want to see, and then I think every for people who played open ladder is we don't want to see a dwarf team at 1400 TV, guard spammed all the way, and then basically who's got 25 games in. We know there's a competent coach behind that team, and basically matched to someone who's just started a team,
Yeah.
and or
there is
even someone who's like 10 games in, or someone who's like 30% win rate with 7 losses. We don't want that unless we have no choice because there isn't a
Okay, we're
should
just
at least matchmaking cycle say, is there someone close to you that's somewhat competent, successful team-wise, not necessarily coach-wise. Let's say take the coach rating out of the picture for now. But within that window of pool of players, don't pick that poor sod that basically is just because he has the same team value, but the team is at bottom of the ladder. Don't put him against the number one dwarf coach, right? Because like who cares? Like why are we even playing this game, right?
But then it is
So
going to take some
one of the
time
things
to
is if there is a
establish the
competent
point where
coach,
those ratings are helpful, isn't it? So my first four or
yes,
five games, it's going to be very random, and then after that, it should have an idea of who I am and how I coach, and give me a better matchup.
yes, and that's unfortunately where we're setting, right? Unless we consider like with Chris's with the lifetime coach ratings, and we track that in Blood Bowl 3 and use that as a basis as part of the algorithm to match teams,
Elyod, do
right?
you want a
Then
bit of your history brought into how your teams are matched? Or should it be fresh based on that team? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it comes back to your sort of original question, right? Of what exactly are we trying to rank, and should we be, and that kind of thing. And ultimately, if we are trying to rank how good a coach is versus all other coaches, then I guess we really should take everything into account. But do we really want to rank that? Is maybe not the case.
Can we even rank that? I mean, specifically, Blood Bowl 3 is looking to rank individual teams, find good, successful ones, and then put them together into some form of tournament at the end of a season.
Yeah,
I mean, people are going to confuse that massively with the quality of the coach behind that team, but
yeah, I mean, okay, so there's another thing to say, I guess, which is that something you mentioned before, which is that whatever ranking we use, it will typically be the same coaches at the top of the list, right? The same coaches playing the best Blood Bowl, the same coaches taking advantage of it. And there's something in what Geryon said about like certain types of coaches, like the good casual coaches not having time to compete in certain systems. Having said that, any system is going to be, well, maybe not any system, but probably any system that Sino wants to bring in, right? Any system that encourages playing lots of games is going to favor playing lots of games, right? Even Dode Math, like maybe the teams in the current BB3 system that qualify to have tons of games on, but in Dode Math, right, you can play 30 games on one team, and then you can play 30 games on another team, and 30 games on another team, and increase your odds that way, right? So, so yeah, I think mostly the rating system is going to be it's mostly for the most part going to turn out to be the same coaches at the top right. To me, a big consideration is what are the games like, right? And not even, maybe this is a strange one to say, but not even just mathematically, right? Not even just in terms of putting together a matchup that has a 50-50% outcome, but in terms of putting together a matchup that both coaches feel kind of happy with, right? And okay, if your Amazons are into dwarfs, then you're not going to feel happy. But if you're probably we shouldn't do anything to prevent that. But although you could, but I don't think we should. But if your 1K TV team runs into a 2K TV team, then you're not going to be very happy. And maybe we should do something to prevent that kind of thing, right? So even if you can get Morgan Thorg and a wizard and a biased referee and lots of bribes, and actually stand a 50% chance, maybe you're a better coach as well than the higher TV coach.
what if the ELO says that your 1,000 TV team should be able to knock that 2,000 TV team over?
Well, exactly. Like
Elo's wrong.
Eagles wrong. Well, yeah. Personally, I take that matchup, but I know a lot of people would see that massive TV difference and say, "What? This is ridiculous. I'm out of here." So I feel like we should consider people's feelings as well. In a strange sort of way, right? It's important to make matchups that people like the look of, if possible.
You know
to
me,
me,
there is no sewer I will not walk through. There is no potty I will not upend for One World, One Blood Bowl and for content.
I mean,
So,
to
as
me,
well as talking to Matt
this,
Dacker, I sent a message to Voodoo Mike and asked if he had any statement or anything about the hated TV Plus or TV Double Plus that he wished to be included this evening. He sent no reply at all, for which I'm slightly grateful. But whilst we're in that sort of neighbourhood, we should touch on TV Plus, which I utterly, utterly despised. And I think that was fairly common. But you always think the majority agree with you, so maybe I'm wrong. Let's throw it open to one other person. Elyod, did you like TV Plus?
So in the context of Cladder, no.
Well, there we are,
It
proven. Everyone hated it.
I think it was just kind of backwards, right? Because ultimately, if you're trying to make every matchup as even as possible in a right, let me think how to probably word this in a system that um, rewards the highest ranking and also like has memory in a way with the Dodbath system, then if you succeeded and every matchup was was 50-50, then the people who qualify it becomes random, right? If you compensate for the skill advantage by giving them extra toys to play with, the lower skill coach, then the coaches who have the better rankings at the end of the season are just the luckiest ones, or the ones who played the most games, right? If everybody plays the same amount of games, it's just purely random if every games are turned according to it, right? So it just didn't seem to fit the system at all. Maybe there's a system which it would work, but not Cladder now.
I mean, a version of something similar was trialled for the first iteration of Black Box on Fumble years ago. And it killed its stone dead within a week. People found it a huge disincentive to playing on, that every game they were successful in, they would be penalised in the next game by a much harder game.
I think that ties into an earlier thing that you said, Elio, that maybe we shouldn't be aiming for a 50% win rate.
Right. So
because that's really, really bad, like horribly bad. We've tried it; it really doesn't work, and everyone hates it.
yeah.
Because you get penalized for winning. You get harder and harder matchups. You get more and more TV disadvantage over time, and that's horrible for everyone. No one likes it.
Wrong as he
And
is, I am going to speak up for Voodoo Mike here. Because, I mean, I absolutely agree. The human impact, and he never takes the emotional impact. It's not something he considers anything other than anecdotal and hence irrelevant to him. He's very much a statistician. The emotional impact of achieving what he is setting out to do, a 50% win outcome at every game, is appalling and drives people from the game in droves. But doesn't there have to be some aspect where we do reward
Well,
people for being an underdog, give them some help, and we have to penalise successful people to some degree? Or else aren't we just going to end up with Elyod ruthlessly dominating people? Don't we need some way of limiting him?
well, to be fair, and this goes back to this because of the matchmaking in Blood Bowl 2 wasn't based off of preferentially based off of players of the same ranking, just on the ladder position. It was all driven by team. And because of that, that was the only measurement or the metric they could use to modulate to get some form of way to even out to make the matchings be paired. They basically just give the winning player 0 to 250 more difference in TV win. But the other problem with Blood Bowl 2 matchmaking is that based off of, and I'm not speaking on as an authority here, but based off of the way people are spinning, I think it's more. I think it's FIFO, first in, first out. So if a coach starts spinning and there's another coach, right? If it fits the metrics of does it fit, right? But does the shirt fit you even though it's too big? If okay, fine, we're gonna match you. And what ends up happening is you're not getting the best matchup that's available with the players. You're just getting okay. This guy's got a 1400 TV dwarf team. It's got a 20-0 record. Good coach, good team. And then all of a sudden there's 1800 Nurgle team, 500 record with all Klopom, right? And it's gonna go and basically he's ranked 200 because could barely win, right? Right? They just go, well, this is the right matchup, right? Instead, basically going, well, there was a 1600 elf team with an 80% win rate that could have been there. Why wasn't this matched up? They were spending approximately the same time. It's because I think what's happening is that basically first they're not basing off rank, or they're not including rank as part of the equation. But the other one is, oh, it just happens that these two came into the spin pool for, so they fit, so we're gonna shovel them off and send them away.
So there's some limitations on their system, which isn't rechecking for better matches. You think once it's got something, it's sitting on it and saying that's fine, and a lot of confirmation bias where people are getting butthurt that their great team is getting killed and thinking it's the fault of the system.
I mean, there is also
But there's an undeniable flaw within any bottled system using TV Plus that if you go big early, you'll never face the negatives of being matched with something 250 above you because there isn't anything 250 above you.
That's the other
But you'll
problem
be
with
continuously punching down.
there's not enough players in open ladder and even with like 4,000 players in Blood Bowl 2 to get around essentially busting TV Plus and matchmaking, because essentially if you go up on high TV early, you basically it just can't find a good matchup for you, so you're always basically 400 up against some poor side.
But it can punish people by putting them against you, so it's worked well for them. But you can never get punished because there's nothing that can punish you above you.
Yes, you'll never get punished. In fact, you're actually punishing like just for the most players. Most of the players in Blood Bowl are 500 players, 500, 50% players, and they actually don't play a lot. They play like 20, 30 games open ladder and they quit. And that's essentially the vast majority of players are like that. So what ends up happening is the system don't want a system where basically they come in and they play Elyod's. Elyod plays Chorus occasionally. 2000 K Chork team gets completely wrecked and basically says, I'm not playing open ladder anymore. And that happens a lot. It's almost like what's that? The Italian guy, Pareto principle, in the sense that the best players had the lion's share of the games, and you just feed off all the crappy players that come in and they get pissed off and they leave after 20, 30 games. And that's unfortunately the way the ladder is set up, and we're not helping things by just.
Can we use a system that helps stop that?
if you have lifetime coach ratings,
I mean, let me get something straight. If you're rating on a team basis or a coach basis, it doesn't really matter that much. If you're rating on a team basis, you need to some way to quickly, roughly estimate where you're at, so you have a higher K value in Elo to get you to move faster to where you're supposed to be, depending on your early few matches. But the one fundamental problem that I've run into running Fumble for a long time is that you have a group of people that are not being talked about here. You have a group of people who are relatively good at the game, but they don't necessarily play to win. They play to kill their opponents. So they are roughly mediocre in terms of what the system sees. You have 50% win ratings. So they're mediocre coaches because they play with a different goal, which means that they will create a sort of a band where, okay, you have all these people that are playing here. They don't have to be many of them, but every new coach have to go through that shark water to get to the top tiers. Once you get
terrible.
past that, you're fine. But that's a huge problem for any system. That has almost killed the black box system multiple times, because I've had to come up with ways to avoid that. And the moment you put rating into the matchmaking system, you create the feedback loop that's really, really negative towards like making that type of play beneficial, because the players who play like that, they get worse and worse coaches. They never get to face the top tier coaches because their rating is so low artificially. So they will always be feeding against the lower rated coaches, who are people who are trying to get past to the top and who are trying to compete in a fair way. So that's one of the fundamental problems with the rating system, and pushing rating into the matchmaking system.
Yeah. Is it's
And,
driving negative behaviours, which are then alienating people that would otherwise be attracted by the system you're building.
That's kind of like the gatekeeper in fight sports, right? You got the banger that basically can't
yeah,
beat the elite players, but if you want to get into that elite category, you're gonna have to beat that gatekeeper,
yeah,
right?
and
So
it's also, I mean, fundamentally, what happens when you put rating into the matchmaking system is that the TV will be fundamentally larger. You will get larger TV gaps fundamentally by adding a different factor into the system, regardless of what it is. In this case, rating system, you get larger TV gaps, and whatever you think about the TV system, that it's horrible and the inducements are too good or too bad or they're horrible or whatever you may think, people hate large TV gap games. They just hate them. If you see something that you have more than 100K difference, people start complaining. And I get complaints all the time, every day, essentially, about the TV system being, okay, I've got paired against this. This is so unfair. I get paired against that. This is so unfair. I mean, it's not.
And it's almost always looking at that raw number underneath, what one TV is compared to the other TV.
Yeah.
because that's the only
Yes.
one that's very transparent. But that's the common complaint, and I know I've complained about it. PC, I've heard you complain about it because you're like we've all even all the good coaches have complained about this. Even the bad coaches complain about it. Everyone complains about it because it's a metric that's easily digestible. It's a single number.
And for some reason,
Unfortunately,
people don't complain when they're the underdog and win, but when they're underdog and loses, that's a huge negative play experience, and people get really put off by the system. Like really, they stop playing the game, and that's a real problem for the
Right. And this has
longevity of the
always
game
been
and
my
success
thesis
as
to
such.
Voodoo Mike for, 15 years, however long that troll's been under his bridge, is that if you don't engage with the impact on the human of the system you're building a system for humans that will have no humans in it.
yeah. Well, here's my take on the rating system and rating. And but essentially, what you have is a hypothetical. Let's hypothetically just say someone who's going to spin, who's got a good team. Who's got a 14, just say 1400 TV, and they're high up in the ranking. So when they're spinning, let's just say hypothetically there's four players within the same TV range, whatever the acceptable tolerance, that threshold that's been set. Let's just say it's 350 TV difference, right? And of that 300 TV difference, you basically order it based off of rank and TV. And then you basically pick the one that is closest to the rank of the ones that are in the acceptable range, right? And basically, like, unfortunately, you're gonna have there's not enough players in the TV pool to basically, how would I say it? You're going to get really perceptibly shitty matchups, right? What do you think? Because being down, right? But if that's the case, then let's just make sure that players are reasonably skill-wise, or so it's not skill, team. The teams are reasonably accomplished and meet that TV criteria.
But
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that basically we have override TV over team rating over TV. It's just when you have a multiple choice of selected teams within that TV range, pick the one that has the highest rate TV. It's as close to that TV, not the highest, closest team rating to that to yourself, right? And go from there, right?
But I mean, there's always tension in what do you want to rate on the closest, and then time comes into that factor too. No one wants to wait 3 days to get a perfect matchup, but they might be prepared to wait 5 minutes to get a perfect matchup if waiting 1 minute gets them one that's down 500 TV. How we
Yeah,
determine what that matchup is, how long they're prepared to wait, and what the sliders we move on this huge scale of things we're trying to put together is quite interesting to me. And then what impact that has on humans' behaviours. And then, as you said, what don't we have to be careful that any system we set up where Elyod can just ruthlessly destroy beneath his jackboots, 300 noobs on his quest for power and glory, is that stoppable at all? Should we be even trying to stop that? Isn't that sort of Darwin in Blood Bowl that
But the other
these
one is
newer players need to
there's right
learn?
to we try to get that's the thing. We try to create a system that at least reasonably gives them just covers all the most obvious negative experiences. But one of the things I played in to see thousands of games in is teams that are higher TV than myself. You know how to optimize. It's still a disadvantage. I realize that, but for a lot of us, like PC, I'm sure your win rate down 300 TV is like over 60%,
Yeah, of course it is.
right?
But
So you
that
figured
doesn't
it
mean
out.
those are enjoyable games. And I
So
would also question what the. I mean, it's a lot lower than my standard win rate, of course, because those are much harder games. I would also question what that's giving the newer player to give them a huge bunch of inducements they don't know how to spend well, to try and deal with me, or to give me a bunch of inducements I do know how to spend well to try and deal with them. It doesn't feel like that's giving them an even match. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm toxic and old, but I'm going to put the viewpoint forward because I am the devil's avocado. Back when I learnt, he says, opening up a Werther's original, not only do we have to upload our own games to the Fumble site, but there was none of this protection. You just played whoever was there to play, and you got ruthlessly exploited, and you learned.
PC, we're all soft now. That's the problem.
But the only way you could look at, because there was no other metric really, you could look at win percentage and things, was to look at the TV of the team that was offering you a game, look at your TV. You might have a quick dip in and go, well, have they put all their TV into things that are going to destroy my team? If I'm elves, have they picked tackle across all of their chaos, for example? But if not, if it looked reasonably even, you had a couple of killers, they did, whatever, and the TVs were fairly even, you thought I'd give that that game a go. And if they're much better than you didn't get any advantage except you learnt by them being better than you. Am I just old-fashioned? Is that day gone? Do people need, if they're new, they need their handheld more than that?
well,
No, what you're saying is fair, right? Like there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with just getting the closest possible TV matchup, right? And in fact, and I'm going to be fair with this. For a Blood Bowl 3, get expensive mistakes in, fix the proper inducements, so the inducements are done properly, get the experience, get the game working properly, and then just match purely based on the closest TV you have is honestly the starting point, right? And now, if you want to kind of massage and tune it when we're talking about with ranking and things like that, or having some sophisticated ranking formula for the ladder, right? That, in my opinion, isn't absolutely necessary until you get the foundation of the game fixed, right? And it comes down to
Yeah.
getting the game working, none of this nonsense exploitations on inducements, and basically you counter the other person's because you have 3 million in gold, you can basically prevent the way it's set up right now, you can prevent the other team from ever getting more because you just counter buy, right? And there's all these kind of nonsense right now in the game, right, that needs to be fixed in BB3, and just have closest possible TV matching, and that's the starting point.
Well, I
Right?
thought the
And then
first pre-season of Blood Bowl 3 we can all just discount as utter piffle. The teams that are in this ludicrous resurrection format, some of them were playing teams down 1,000 TV at the start. Some of them got fully number wanged into just weird positions. But this latest iteration of the pre-season, can we stand in front of that and say that we think it's going to be reasonable?
I
The
I
the
think so.
the
I think
number
so.
wang seems to be less mad. People seem to be understanding it. If they play well and do well, they seem to go up.
Yeah, the first rating system um, averaged out based on games. So unfortunately, if you played less games and won a bunch, and there was a yeah, it's way that's why he is. I'm gonna say averaged out. So that's why basically someone who played 4 games ended up being number one versus someone who played 20 games because you just got this massive rating right at the start, and then just anyways. So they understand, realize that, and they fixed it. And so the new system, the only thing I have with issue with the new system, and because is that basically now we got the matchmaking algorithm in there. So that's semi that's that's reasonable. The current ELO system, because the K value is constant, and because it's a short season, right? You're gonna have it's essentially gonna be I would say the median average game per team is gonna be around 80. Now, is that something that you want? That's my question. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying with the league and open ladder, is that the ceiling or is that the median you want people to have for to be
Well, I
in
mean, some people will stay up till 3 a.m. to play one specific game to get into a chalice. So if they have that sort of commitment, then I think there's no doubting they might play 80 games. Elyod, are you going to grind out 80 games to get into this next iteration of the Blood Bowl 3 competition? Does that appeal to you?
It's a very odd time to come to me. I don't know what the link was there. So just to back up a little bit, you said like should we try something different, and I think yes, and I completely take Geryon's point about kind of resetting back to something similar we had in Blood Bowl 2 with just the flat TV matching, and that, well, something better than we had in Blood Bowl 2 ideally with just the flat TV matching. And for sure that will work, right? That'll be good enough.
You're presumably licking your lips at the idea of flat TV matching.
Well, no, I'm not. So because your previous question was should we try something different, and I think yes. And certainly this season started off terribly. Now it's a bit better. It still might not be great, but I'm glad that they did something different. I'm glad that they tried some kind of elo matching thing because I think it's nice to try and advance things beyond what we had in Blood Bowl 2.
Sure.
And I personally don't like being matched up at even TV against people who are a lot worse than me. I would like if I did get preferentially matched against stronger coaches, and obviously with that, I'd want to be rewarded, right? So that in that kind of system, I'd want some kind of elo component, right? Some kind of coach skill or team skill reflection, team record reflection. So yeah. However, I also think it's important to be matched up at TV, right? And so I'd want good TV matchups. I'd want good coach skill matchups, ideally. But of course, this all comes at an expense, right? We have a limited player base and we have a limited time to spin. What I'm quite interested in is that the Cyanide seem to be aiming for shorter spins in Blood Bowl 3, right? In Blood Bowl 2, we had the 5-minute spin pool. In Blood Bowl 3, the spins on average seem to be much quicker. So it would be interesting to see what people think, right? Maybe this is something Cyanide are taking into account. Maybe they think in general people want shorter spins. Personally, I'd like to spin for a little longer and try to get stronger, tighter matchups of, TV or Elo. And the one more point on that is that should coaches choose, should coaches choose their own spiral out rate? Should they choose their own maximum TV? How would that affect like the fairness of the rankings, right? Could I say I want my potential TV difference to increase by 100 every minute, or I want it to increase by 100 every 10 seconds and get a game, in half the time or something?
Interesting things we could change. Is the answer to you, Elyod, to bring in leagues, to bring in divisions?
Oh yeah, so divisions, interesting. Well, okay, so slightly side point is Blood Bowl 3 and Blood Bowl 2 are quite different from Fumble, right? Because Fumble has this, well, right now it's called the competitive division, right? Where all the teams play in, but then that in itself is not a tournament. Players are ranked on their performance on it, and some people treat the ranking itself as a tournament, I guess. CF Matt Daka. But there are a lot of other tournaments built around the competitive division that people can take their teams from and enter into them without having to have any kind of record or anything like that, which is quite a cool thing. When you asked about and Blood Bowl 2 and 3 working like that could be cool, but it probably won't be the case, right? Sadly. When you asked about divisions, are you?
I'm saying, should today, you and I, after the first division, be lumped into, the try-hard, grindy division?
So
And
divisions
maybe
based on
Johnny Noob be separated out so he doesn't have to face us.
Yeah, that's fair. Potentially, right? Like it would be good, I guess, if there was certainly like some protections at lower TVs and stuff, and protections at like lower skills as well for newer coaches, maybe. But then I guess it's hard to tell if a newer coach is new to
We've
Blood
had
Bowl or
those
not.
on Fumble. We still do, don't we, Krista? Have some protections in there for the rookies and the new players and the new teams, or
For Black Box, not currently, no.
so we did. Were they popular?
I think so. It removed an aspect of the shark water behavior, min-maxing and keeping your TV low.
So we had some predatory teams that were really preying right down at that level
Yes.
on absolutely brand new teams.
Yes. There were a handful, and that caused a huge problem. It was a real issue.
So it was a response to that rather than a belief that a new team needs some protection from the wilds of Blood Bowl.
If I'm going to be a bit constructive, if I was going to do a matchmaker like BB3, look where you just enter and you start spinning, what I would probably do was to sort of take multiple numbers into account. TV, which is important for people, rating, if you want to do that, and number of games for a given team. But let's say that you put that onto a graph, a 3D graph in 3D space, with one axis being TV, one axis being rating, and the third one being number of games. You put that into the space, and you put all the teams, all the opponents that join the system into this 3D space. And then you have, for each team, you have a sort of a distance calculation saying, in the first, let's say 5 seconds, we look at a very narrow sphere around that. Okay, is there any opponent that's very, very short distance away on all these axes? And then you increase this bubble of potential opponents. And then you do that for all the teams and find, okay, when you have a match where two people are within the distance of each other, then you put that match into play. The benefit of doing it this way is that you get, from a developer perspective, I'm a developer. From a dev perspective, you get ways to adjust. You can put factors saying, okay, the TV will act.
Lots of things you can slide and change.
Yeah, so the TV matters this much, number of games matters that much, rating matters that much, and then you can just twist and tune and see what people like and see what feels good and see what's good. The benefit here, I said before that I don't think that rating should be part of the matchmaker. I'll revise that by saying that the rating direction shouldn't be part of it. So you can't get a better TV game just because you're lower rated. But if you're saying that, okay, you're within this span, this is acceptable, and then you can increase that span over time if you wait. Ideally, people and coaches will be able to choose how they want to expand that bubble, essentially, or tweak those factors and say, this matters more to me, this matters less. That's a completely different thing. That it adds a lot of complexity to the UI, and I understand why you wouldn't want to do that. But having the options to tweak is super, super important, and it would allow Cyanide or whoever to tweak and tune those variables over time and say, okay, this seems fair, this doesn't seem fair. We should deal with these types of problems this way.
Out of interest, why do you have something I wondered before in this context is why do you have the team value axis and the player the number of games? Like, I never quite understood why number of games was important. Isn't the TV axis like far more important than the number of games? What do you think about that?
Probably for people for perception, yes. The number of games matters because you have teams who play. If you have a team at 1200 TV that has played 100 games versus a team at TV 1200 that has played 2 games, guess which one has been more optimized? Guess which one has more guard and mighty blow and whatever sneaky git dirty player. So that's sort of to avoid the sharky type of teams.
Isn't then just
Uh,
the 1200 2-game-old person being penalised for not building their team very well?
Yeah, but you can't build your team in the first 2 games. You
I
just don't have a choice.
I
You
guess
have
it's
over 100 games.
I guess it's somewhat correct for like the bloatier teams as well, right? The teams where you're Nurgle and you're spending 200 gold buying a reroll or something and an extra player in the first couple of games.
Yeah, I think that's a good compromise for a system like that where you enter like a spinning system. For Fumble, that's not quite as useful because there are so many fewer coaches at a given time.
Now, we have three somewhat loud and fairly opinionated people that seemingly have come to a single view in the chat at the moment, and I think it's a view I want to just throw forward. We've been there a little bit already, but specifically Terrific said it, building also on something the Artemis Black said about the diminishing player pool and how we haven't got time for many, perhaps, bells and whistles. We need a system that's generating games, that's attracting people to play the game, and we certainly can't, divide the player base into 5 different divisions or anything. We just need something that gives people games so they can get games when they want to play Blood Bowl 3. And Trivik says he doesn't really want any game. He doesn't care about the TV, the skill of the opponent or how good the coach is. Really, he gets disinterested with a game that's bigger than, say, 300 TV, different from his TV. And time again, I hear it from the sort of the more active, perhaps the toxic elite, a phrase that's often thrown around, of Blood Bowl, that they want more even games. That's what they consider fun and challenging. As Elyod said, they'd rather be playing a coach usually that is actually challenging rather than someone that's, an hour wasted just knocking over someone that really ought not to have been there. But they want tighter TV games. Am I just listening to an echo chamber of the people that are going to win loads of games? And actually, if I talk to, people that are, as Geryon said, the vast majority of players who will play some single player, will come online, will play 15, 20 games online, find it just awful and never play again. They don't want even games. They want fun games. How do we give them fun games? How does a ranking system generate fun?
I think Chris basically said this, and it's the same issue, same in Blood Bowl 2, and I don't see it changing in Blood Bowl 3. Is that when you're spinning and it's matchmaking spinning, there's an assumption or an expectation that you're going to get a fair game, and that's based off of TV.
Right.
So once you break that contract, whether it's unofficial or official, people are gonna go, "What the hell? Why are we doing this?" Right? So the TV, and I agree with Chris on this, is that TV has to be if it's going to be only one parameter, it's got to be that, right? Now, if it's going to be like you articulated very well, and essentially formulating essentially uh, how you handle multiple conditions on it. But is that TV has to be the primary one, right? If you start getting into a situation where you're getting very flexible with TV and or rank or games or any other criteria takes precedence over TV. People are gonna go, I spun because there's TV matching in this league, and why am I getting 350 TV difference, right? And that's kind of it's the unofficial breaking of the contract and basically setting a really bad expectation or not meeting expectations on the player because it's a surprise. But because you're getting a surprise, there's the unofficial agreement that you're going to get something that at least is fair. And if you don't get that perception of being fair, people go, fuck this. And they complain about it, right? And they know they're going to play uphill because no matter how good a coach is, if the opposing coach, I'm going to say this, and people might disagree with me, at 55% or 60% range or higher, right? That TV advantage plays huge. The only time where that TV advantage becomes less of an issue is if the player makes fundamental, multiple strategic, tactical mistakes throughout the game. But like a 60 or borderline under 60% player, they don't make enough, and it's very hard for even a good player to overcome that TV difference because you get, for example, you get guard locked, and basically, what are you gonna do? All your players are agility 3. There's nothing you really can do, right? You're not gonna make a fundamental error.
So no matter
So
how elite the player, if they spin into somebody that knows how to use the advantage they're being given, they're probably in trouble. But if they
they're
spin into someone that's hopeless, doesn't matter what advantage you give the hopeless person, the elite coach is probably still going to find ways to get it done.
exactly.
But it's still going to feel, Elyod, even if you are getting it done. Is that going to feel okay, or is it still not a game that interests you?
Well, yeah, this is so to some extent I agree with Geryon, to some extent I don't. I think some matchups and some TV differences suffer more or less for being TV downright, and also in the new rules, probably the TV differences matter slightly less. But even if they didn't matter at all, I think the perception is the important part, right? And like Krista says, people don't like spinning into big TV down matchups. So I think that's number one. Number one has to be TV, right? Like in an ideal world, we could match by TV and match by rating and things as well.
But if the
yeah,
people that don't like it are you and me, who are probably going to spin again anyway, and the people that are getting all the bonuses are the people that are only playing 20 or 30 games, are we actually losing anyone, or are we only penalising the people who perhaps should be penalised?
You're losing the new players if you do something bad. If the system is set up to spin, let's say that I come in as a new player. I've never played Blood Bowl before. I come into like, okay, I got this new game for Christmas or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And like, okay, I'm gonna start competing online. That sounds cool. Like I play Dota or whatever competitively. Of course, I'm gonna play in this ladder. I come in, I create my team at 1 million gold, and then I get paired against that 1.2 million opponent in the first game and get crushed. It's not because of the 200k difference. It's because the other coach is just so much better. But that doesn't matter because you
Right.
come in with an expectation that 1 million is what I built my team for. That's how the game is balanced.
So that's where the statistics fall apart, isn't it? In a million
Yeah.
versus a million game against the same coach who ruthlessly crushes them, they're going to
Then
feel at least I had a fair chance going in.
No, they will complain about the RNG. and get disillusioned and saying the RNG is terrible, and in tabletop I have much better dice.
Yes. So is that our ultimate goal, to create a ranking system so good that everyone just moans about the RNG?
I think so, essentially.
Which I accept can never be solved until you finally get round to putting a proper one in, Krista. I don't know what you've been doing all of these years.
Indeed.
Geryon, one complaint I've had is this now over? From a lovely friend called Oriolensis. I wanted to put this directly to you and see what anyone else thinks about it. His big problem is that the consequential matchups is what he wants more of, and he worries that in ELO there's too much luck on who he spins into. He said he won 4 games and gained 5 places on the number Wang ladder, but then he came back online a few hours later to find he'd lost 10 places because people had just spun into people luckier and got bigger LO from their wins than he'd got.
Well, this
You
is
need
where
to get lucky and if I like spin into Elyod and turn him over, that's going to give me a chunky LO, isn't it? I'm going to leap up the ladder.
So yeah, to that point, right? And this is the where if you want a competitive ladder, you need to start looking at not just TV matchmaking, but as Christopher said, is basically you need to put in other attributes into the formula, like rank, like number of games. Number of games less so from a competitive perspective, but that's for more of the emotional aspect of like people spinning into someone that has 20 more games than you. But the ranking piece is important because if the players are available and they're within the matchmaking within the TV range, you should be matched with those players so that you're playing your peers.
Okay, so we can all sign up to this, that ideally we want even TV matches. People seem to enjoy them and like playing those. But we do need to bring some aspect of either team rating or coach rating in, depending on the system used, because otherwise it's just going to be brutally unfair to people. There's only 2 sliders left to move, which either means we've got to spend longer finding the games to get those better games, or we've got to increase the TV gap, or, I mean, what's left that we can change?
Well, one of the things with spinning is that let's just say you want to spin let's say you're about to spend looking for a match, but you don't want to waste your time with a low tier, low rank team, right? Because you're at the end. You basically got 50, 60 games in. You just want to get up the ladder, right? At that point, right, you're really looking to play at your peer, right? Why can't you just say, look, set before you spend, set your conditions and say, don't match me with a nobody. I want basically I don't want anyone and other than of this rating. And I'm making the choice that I want to wait 10, 15 minutes for that game,
Okay,
right?
so can I set my parameters? I don't want to be any TV more than, say, 50 more than me, but I'm quite happy to play down, say, 500. I want to play a coach, ideally within, 50 coach ranking chicken rendang points of me, and I'm prepared to wait up to 10 minutes to do it. That would all be perfectly legal? Would that
That
be?
would, to me, that would be the ideal option, yeah. But it's implementation difficulty and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, from Cyanide perspective, do you want them to spend time on doing this fancy stuff with your limits, or do you want them to add, I don't know, expensive mistakes?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky I've got Fumble where, Blood Bowl
Yeah,
3
but I mean, fundamentally,
is
that's
trying
what
to.
it comes down
Yes,
to.
yeah. I mean, I think the people that play Blood Bowl 3 would want Blood Bowl 3 to be good. But, we have, I mean, on Fumble we have a fantastic working model of fantasy football using the 2020 rules. And hence, how we're ranking things there is as interesting to me. And the behaviours it drives in people. And we perhaps haven't spent enough time on that today. Elyod, when you are ruthlessly beating people in this lovely new system, does it shouldn't it just come down to in the end playing some games to get to the tournament wins? Have you ever stayed up till 3 a.m. to get that vital point of chicken rendang
Yeah,
and fumble or that? Sorry.
don't lie, Elyod.
I mean, I know you've done it to qualify for a tournament, and I
That's
was joking about
bedtime.
that earlier. Would you ever do it for? Would you put that level of commitment in just for a ranking, just for a place on a ladder board or a?
Oh no, not for me, because I find the tournaments more interesting. Yeah, I just that's what I find fun. Some people find the ranking numbers more
They
fun,
do, don't they?
the,
Yeah.
the win rates, that kind of thing. That like I said, it's sometimes nice to look at those, and they have some information in them. But ultimately, I enjoy tournaments. I like knockout tournaments mostly. The
Yeah, me
formal
too.
majors, the chalice, that kind of thing. So I'll stay up till 3 a.m. to qualify, but not to become number one on the leaderboard.
Yeah. I mean, I feel exactly the same. I've never really understood rankings or the fuss about them, but we need them. I don't like playing uneven matches, but I worry if I don't that I'm going to disincentivize newer players even more. But I mean, maybe as Krista says, even if we take away the "oh, I was matched badly," there'll just be another thing to moan about. Perhaps if people want an out that isn't, I'm not particularly good at this game yet, and I perhaps want to try and get better. Perhaps they'll always find one.
Yeah, but that being said, though, less people will stop playing because of the RNG being bad than them feeling that they get unfair matches when they
Right.
spin. And that's a big differentiation. I mean, you need the new coaches, otherwise the system dies eventually.
Geryon, I'm not asking you to lift the skirts and reveal the underparts of Cyanide. I know you may be under there yourself, and I want you to stay warm and tucked into their skirts. In your opinion, though, we are coming towards the end. I'm going to give everyone a chance to say whatever they want to say at the end. But I guess the big question I want to ask to you before seeing if there's anything burning in chat I want to throw at any of you. We are just entered the second pre-season chunk of the three pre-seasons that has been designated to be before Blood Bowl 3 launches into some form of competitive season. Do you think you can tell people that the ladder they're on there, the way they're being rated, makes sense, that they can intuit it, and that good players will be rewarded with a reasonable position on the ladder if they play the 80 games?
Yes. The ladder
Okay,
formula, without specifying what
sure.
it is is consistent, and it follows what's out there, right? Um, so yes, and thanks to Luminous uh, and his uh, and his ability to sniff out APIs, we are able to get the actual rank score of all the people on the leaderboard. So they will not be able to until the ladder and the ELO values are presented in by Cyanide in this second tranche. we have a way to get that output so that if players are interested, why they drop 10 places after a loss or a draw, they will see that basically that the 10 players beneath them were only 1 or 2 points under them, right? So they're that's part of the problem is that you can't really trust a formula when it's a black box, and then also there's no transparency in the actual metrics that the number itself of, and that's what a lot of people are freaking out
Absolutely.
about.
And I don't want you breaking any confidences because it is up to Cyanide if they choose to reveal their formulas and their numbers or not. Krista, you've always just thrown yours out there and said, come have a look, haven't you?
For the most part.
I mean,
It's been some things have been closed occasionally, but there is no reason to. If the system is good enough, it's going to stand under people looking at it.
do you think
And
that
yes,
visibility has been important?
absolutely, 100%.
Now, to be fair with cyanide, the reason why it's a still a work in progress, and they're still working through the rankings and how the ladder is going to work. Um, so they don't want to publish something premature. It's
Yeah.
not because they don't want the scrutiny. It's a case where I'm going to be on. I don't want to sound like a shill or anything like that. But cyanide is just that they're still part of the preseason. They're still
Yeah.
working it out, and so that's why they don't want to publish something that they're not committed to yet.
I mean, I think on this show we've tried to be as fair as we can to Cyanide. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what's good for Blood Bowl is good for Blood Bowl. And, a healthy Blood Bowl 3 will be good for Blood Bowl, and that's good for everything I care about. I would certainly wish them no harm. The question was asked earlier as to do I want the focus of Cyanide on the matchmaking system, the rankings, the ladders, the competitive scene. I've been thinking about that for the last hour. I don't not want it there. Because at the moment there's very little selling that version of Blood Bowl to people. And we're hemorrhaging people left, right and centre from it. It's currently getting less users than Blood Bowl 2 is, which is, I would hope, worrying to a game just being released that isn't beating its predecessor from 5 years earlier, more, 7 years earlier, which doesn't have anything like the latest rules in it. So, I mean, I hope we get the admin tools, but I hope we also get a visible ladder and a competition that they're willing to describe to people and let people pick into the formula of and see if it makes sense to them, because we've got to have something that attracts people. And I, at the moment, wonder what it's going to be. I mean, obviously, we also need to get the Blood Bowl underneath it playing well. I think Fumble's Glico system is exciting to me. I think it's a leap forwards from the Elo system. I'm looking forward to building mine back up to a point where it's truly not representing my low level of Blood Bowl skill. Elyod, do you in your head keep a track of all of them as you go to bed? Your chicken rendang, your BB3 number Wang, your Blood Bowl 2 win percentage? Do any of them are those numbers going through your head in terms of defining quality of you or anyone else?
No, no. Like the Blood Bowl 2 rankings especially. And this is why I would like some tendency towards Elo if possible, like because it just depends so much on the quality of the coaches. It just becomes into a noob smashing kind of experience, right? So yeah, but even outside of that, no, not at all. All I take to bed with me is my major win.
Yes, I had one years ago when there was a lot more people on Fumble. It is lovely to get one. It's nice that you've joined us in that club. The last thing I want to throw to all of you is, does it matter at the end of the day, whatever ranking system we have, it's going to get manipulated, isn't it? And as long as it makes some kind of sense, isn't that good enough? As long as it gets people playing, gives them a number to look at, does it really matter where that number is or how much people are gaming it? I mean, I'm a great believer. Java gave us a lovely quote that post counters in forums produce spam, and ranking systems generate strategies for ranking manipulation. No matter what we do, no matter what we decide or put in place, no matter how hard Crystal works, no matter how much Cyanide put in protections or barriers or boundaries, whatever ranking system, it's only going to be a number. It's not going to be fundamentally meaningful, though it won't be devoid of meaning either. And someone out there is going to find a way to manipulate it higher than it really ought to be for whoever is trying to rate whatever. Do we all just need to accept that there isn't ever going to be a good ranking? Particularly given things like the variation in teams as they grow, the ability of people to have bad days or to be good with one race or not another, the asymmetrical nature of Blood Bowl. Is this all just chasing an impossible dream?
Yeah,
Elio.
for the most part, like we discussed a bit earlier, it will be the same names at the top of the ladder, right? For the in terms of the ranking system, it will most be the same names. I think the bigger priority is making the nicest matchups possible, right, with the resources available. From my perspective.
Krista, are we chasing an impossible dream?
Impossible? No, I don't think so. I think it's possible to make something that's fundamentally much, much better than what we have today. Step one would be to, I mean, Elo or Glico, they're very strong. The real problem we have right now is team value. If we could fix that somehow, and there are ways to do that, to actually compare two teams and not use TV, then we would be in a much better situation.
We have, in the
But
past, we've had worse TVs, haven't we?
yes, I mean
Team rating was particularly very, very bad
yeah,
because we had a weird skill progression which will make no sense to modern players, where you could gain, say, 48 SPP, but it counted you the same as if you had 51, and of course there's a skill break at 50. So the same cost to the team, but it may or may not have a skill attached to it.
The
So the
third
ratings were
edition.
yeah,
utter nonsense.
In the third edition.
Yeah. So you invented your own, didn't you, Krista?
yes. And I mean, I've been thinking about bringing that back in some form, but it's so much effort.
Is that
It's so
solely
much
to
effort.
people penalise so that people that take things like shadowing and fumble rooski, we don't count those as proper skills in matching? Is that
Sort of, yeah. I mean, that would be what the idea would be. You would take all the statistics from all the games and see which skill combinations are better than others, using some sort of, I don't know, AI whatever to use buzzwords to figure
right?
out what combinations are good and which combinations are not. How many blocks do you need in a team? How many dirty players? How many? What
Wow.
happens when you compare dodge to tackle? That kind of stuff. How does that affect win rates? That's
So
something that's
Elyod's
doable.
bludge spam sneaky git pro elves will suddenly be not winning him the chicken rendang he wants them to.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it's possible to do, but is
Okay.
it worth it? Probably not. It's
Is
so much effort that
yeah. Is
you
it a
shouldn't
desirable
let.
outcome? What would it do to
I,
us?
I I I often say good enough is good enough, or I mean, there is also perfect is the enemy of the good. You getting the perfect system is just not viable. It's not worth doing. I could do it because I think it's fun, but for Cyanide to do it, that would just not. It doesn't make any sense.
This is why my beautiful wife can rest assured in my eternal love. Because whilst Angelina Jolie is out there, I'm just not convinced it's a realistic trade. I will stick with what I've got. I will take 98% of perfection, and I will let Angelina elude me for now. Geryon, are we chasing madness, trying to rate things at all? Is it all just so gameable, so broken, so redundant that I will find a way of trashing your system and toppling it?
No, honestly, and just I'm going to speak on behalf of the BB3 application game
Please do.
itself. If they're not dealing with a competition, direct competition outside of the open ladder, then it doesn't really matter what ranking system there is. There's going to be, it's kind of like if there's a forest, there's going to be people who are going to make a contest out of who cuts the most trees down on the forest, right?
Yeah.
So if it's just purely for bragging rights on top of the ladder, the ranking doesn't matter. I think just from this dialogue, I think we have an idea of what essentially what could be a decent, better approach than what we currently have to getting ranking and matchmaking to kind of uh, blend together so that there is something that's more fair than just purely just play as many games as you want. And basically, if you play a lot of games and you win, you're on top of the ladder. So we've kind of discussed it here with all these different attributes that
Yeah.
go in there, included in there. But as Christopher says, basically, Cyanide needs to focuses primarily on getting the game in shape through season 1 and season 2, so that basically people will take the game seriously as completely developed. So the competition aspect of it outside of the ladder, I wouldn't be thinking about it either. Right? It's not as important as getting the core game finished right now. So a lot of this is theory crafting, and one of the things we're like Yakiste is doing right now is with the current structure, let's just see how it works because we're testing it out,
Yeah.
right? It might be that the current Elo system and with the 3-month season window, 80 games is perfectly reasonable. I
Look,
don't think it is,
I
but
don't eat
it,
kale, but I also don't campaign for kale to be withdrawn from supermarkets because some people, I have no idea why, but some people enjoy kale. I currently don't think the current ranking system tempts me. I don't want to have to play 80 games. I will if I really feel like it, but I don't want to have to.
I do
So
agree with you.
I'm going to treat it like kale. I'm going to say that some people like Elyod are out there grinding away, loving their best lives. Me, I'll find other ways. I'll be exploring teams, and I'll see what the competitive system, when it comes in, is asking me to do, and I'll see if that tempts me. Um, I'm joking, of course, Elyod. I'm sure you're not grinding 80 games out, are you?
I've never eaten kale.
Well, there we share that. It's terrible. Don't do it. Although it's very good for you, I hear. So I perhaps shouldn't be giving it bad press. Um, my mum likes growing roses, and when she moved to the house she's in now, they built this lovely sort of tiered garden down to the river. And she grew her roses, and roses take quite a bit of effort, and they take some time to come through, and particularly to grow into a decent-sized rose bush. And she was loving her roses, but the next door neighbours grew some roses too, and theirs are just slightly bigger. And I wish my mum hadn't noticed. Because now every time she looks at her roses, there's that slight pang of regret that they're not quite as big as the neighbours' roses. And the neighbours are horrible people anyway. I don't know why we do it as humans. I don't know why we can't just enjoy our roses. I remember when I try not to look at the chicken rendang on Fumble, because that way does lie madness. But when you've got, I don't know, 160 or 159.6, and you play a couple of games and you notice that suddenly it is 160.2, and you think, yay, I've broken 160, look at me go. Woo, yeah. There's an endorphin run to any ranking, isn't there, to seeing that number go up, to seeing a change in the positive direction. And then we notice someone else's number and they're at 171 and we think, oh, that would be nice. I don't know. I don't know whether rankings are good for us, but I know they're eternal. That whatever we've ever done in Blood Bowl, even in the 145, which we proudly call a non-competitive division, where once again, if you wish to, come on, whether you're new to Fumble or new to Blood Bowl, we'll help you learn. We'll give you lots of advice. You can ask questions like, is block good then? And people will answer rather than take the piss in any way. Even there, when we tried to do it without numbers, people, they wanted to know. How many have I won? How many have I lost? How many have I drawn? That other guy who I played, how many has he won, lost and drawn? So we not only care about our numbers and what numbers attach to us, we seem to care about what numbers attach to other people. It seems part of human nature. I
Not
gave
not
up when I heard that Americans were having competitive barbecues. I mean, it's a barbecue. You turn up, you put sauce on food and you eat it with messy fingers. How how is that anything other than just some people having fun, drinking beer and listening to sport? How can that be a competition? And yet it is. And hence, presumably, they're giving numbers to barbecuers. You know, you're at 8.4 at barbecuing. This is the insanity of the world we live in. So we're never going to escape rankings. They're always going to be there. They're going to be there for Blood Bowl. People are going to care about them. They're going to care about their coach rating. They're going to care about their Blood Bowl 3 number Wang. They're going to care about their win percentage. Some people are going to care about their win percentage on every single race. And, you know, the fact that they've proudly got over 50% on every race with more than X games played or whatever it is. We're never going to stop it. It does drive some incredibly negative behaviours at the same time. Every system is gameable. Yeah, you put post counts on a forum, people will start spamming it. You put a ranking system on any game, people will start gaming that system and looking for a big number. I genuinely have never really cared. I'm trying really hard not to now. But I do worry sometimes that pursuit of that number is to the exclusion of, I don't know, pursuit of the game, pursuit of the happiness, pursuit of truth, honest, and the Blood Bowl way. But then, like Elyod, I've always been much more focused myself on tournaments and on having fun there. Because that's how we can really truly tell who should be running the world, is based on who wins most Blood Bowl tournaments. The book The Player of Games talks about a society that is run entirely by people put in position by how good they are at a game. That's never going to be Blood Bowl, even if I know at least one person that wishes it was. And yet, there's always going to be rankings. I don't know where we're going with any of this, except that rankings are here to stay. Whether it's Elo or Glico, remember it's only just a number. It doesn't mean a fundamental truth. It doesn't tell you who you are. It tries to tell you maybe your odds of winning the next game compared to the other number you see for that team or that coach. And we think most of them aren't particularly great at that. That's my final thoughts. Anything that you guys want to come in on before we all say goodnight? We've given an hour and 50 minutes already. That's a long old One World, One Blood Bowl as it is. I think we've rambled around the subject and found no real answers except, my goodness, isn't this difficult? A final word, Elyod, or just a good night?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the invite as always, and good night. And I've said it completely backwards because now I'll say some other stuff. So yeah, there's a few people saying things like, it's kind of not a priority, which I agree with. I think there were, if I was like magically head of developing the game, then I'd want to focus on some more serious problems as I see in the game. But having said that, we're here to discuss the rankings, and it's a cool topic to discuss, and there's definitely different ways you can go. So I'd like that they did something different, and while number one priority should be, I think, good TV matchups, I do like the fact that I'm incentivized, to play in the closer in the better matchups. Right, I'm not in Blood Bowl 2 when I spin a game into a good coach. I think, oh no, a good coach. I'd rather play a bad coach because winning against a good coach and winning against a bad coach means exactly the same thing. So at least in this system, when I spin into a good coach, or at least a higher elo team, I think, oh, here's some opportunity for me to get some more ranking, and to lose less if I lose right.
I could knock over 20 noobs or one Elyod.
Exactly, yeah. And so, well, I could have said something funny then, but I'm not a funny person. But yeah, but yeah, that's the takeaway basically. TV mashup, great, but it would be nice if we could do something better, if that's possible within the confines of the system.
Well, thank you for coming on, mate. I mean, I genuinely wanted you here because I think you're one of the smarter people I know in Blood Bowl, and I feel very lost here. And I know it's something you did care about, so it's great to have had your perspective on. Thank you for that. Geryon, any final words? And again, a huge thank you to you for coming on. Lovely to show your face to the world.
Glad you invited me. Thank you. No, it was just interesting. I think one of the things here is that without actually having an actual solution, I think from a conceptual basis, just kind of talking it out, it looks like that we all understand the challenges and also understand what are the kind of the basic requirements as well as all the kind of the nice to haves with what would be a challenging solution for open ladder matchmaking as well as ranking. So it's I don't want to I didn't want to I think they both they have to synergize. It's not just all and I think in the open ladder it's not just ranking, it's also not just matchmaking. I think from a competitive basis you need to include the two. And it was an interesting conversation. And just, I finally get to meet Krister. I hear about it all the time from all the other Blood Bowlers, that especially the ones that are familiar with Fumble as well. So finally get to
Take a look at
hear
those dead eyes. That's what 20 years of adminning does, Geryon. You're on a clock. You're on a deadline to that.
Well, to be fair, I may not live that long considering my age. So that's. But thank you.
Look, it's been lovely putting you two together, and sometimes we should just have a show about, I've done a little bit of gentle adminning here and there, about those pressures, because those are extraordinary, and the fact that the two of you live up to those, and the whining and the bleating of this ever sure of themselves but eternally wrong player base. I mean, I've accused Krista so many times of rigging Fumble against me, and he's never denied it, but, I do it jovially, and I think he knows it's ironic, but there are many people that do not have that sense of humour with it and are genuinely sure that the two of you have led a conspiracy against them dominating the world of Blood Bowl. Krista, some final words about all of this before I let us all say goodnight.
Well, first of all, I won't deny that I'm not rigging against you still. But truthfully, thank you for bringing me on. This is a really, really interesting topic to me. It's close to my heart. I love this number stuff. I love ratings. I think they're fun. They're not the end of the world, but they're fun. Other than that, I think I've spoken more than enough for one episode. So thank you very much for bringing me on.
It's been a pleasure. Look, I just want to end with one simple thought. It's kind of repeating what Elyod said a little bit, but I've no shame in that. All I want from any rating system is when I roll into it, is something that I consider to be a fair match, that feels fair to me as I play it. I think that has to be reasonably close in TV. Someone mentioned 300. perhaps 250, 300. Certainly at about that level, I start to think there's almost nothing. If they're any good, there's nothing I'll be able to do. And obviously, as the TV gap increases, that gap changes. If I'm a brand new team, spinning into something with even 10 games and 10 skills, I'm not going to feel there's much I can do about that. So I want a fair game, but I also want it to be fun. I want it to be fun for me. I kind of want it to be fun for the opponent. I'll be honest, it's less important to me, but I do have some sense that this is a two-person game, and I want them to be enjoying it. But I also want them to lose. And I've no idea how I put a fair game that everyone enjoys whilst I still get to win together into a system that makes sense and is fair to people. But I'll be honest, that's what I'm looking for. That was One World, One Blood Bowl 27. I am off next weekend. I'll be playing at the UKTC with a lovely bunch of people. The week after that, we will come back and we will have another One World, One Blood Bowl, which will be, it'll be a retrospective, a history, a living testament to what has happened 1 year on, to the Twitch Stream Dream Team, the 3 streamers who had never played tabletop that I took up to the UKTC a year ago. We did quite well. We finished 3rd. They've all decided they want to go again, and Dimmy G thinks we're going to win it. So next week we will be at the UKTC, and the week after that, me and the 3 of them are going to discuss not just the UKTC, because I never wanted this to be a podcast about everyone's, war stories about their last game of Blood Bowl, because no one gives a shit. What I really want to ask is, what's their last year been like? Have they been elsewhere? Have they taken a tabletop? Have they not played it since? So of course we'll talk about the result, but we'll also talk about that year since they broke their tabletop virginity and what's been happening to them since. I think that'll make an interesting show. That'll be on in 2 weeks' time. Until then, thank you for coming with us tonight. I am just going to end the stream because I desperately need to go and have a wee. I won't be rating you on. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you all for coming by. Wave everyone, because that's always a nice ending, and it gives me a nice easy point to find when I do the editing. Thanks very much, and night night.